Hello, this is David Rovix with another episode of Discussions with David, a live stream broadcast I've been doing most every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday during the pandemic, as long as I can't travel and play music for a living anymore. I'm also broadcasting on Mondays and Tuesdays. Mondays, I host Pandemic Open Mic Mondays, which anyone with a song, poem, or rant is encouraged to sign up for at davidrovix.com/POMM. Tuesdays, I host Fifth Estate Live, produced by Peter Werby. All of these live stream broadcasts start at 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT every weekday. And you can find them both live and in archived form on the Facebook pages of Popular Resistance, KBOO Community Radio, and my own Facebook pages and channels on YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, VK, and LinkedIn. If you go to davidrovix.com or search on any podcasting platform for the podcast This Week with David Rovix, you can also find these programs in audio form soon after they're broadcast live. Another place you can find the broadcasts, along with lots of free content as well as content reserved only for patrons, such as my 16-part audio memoir, is at patreon.com/davidrovix. Today, I'm honored to have with me for the hour musician, professor, and author Will Kaufman. Will teaches at the University of Central Lancashire in England and writes a whole lot of books, among many other activities. He's an accomplished multi-instrumentalist and sings the songs of the folks he writes books about as well. In 2011, he wrote Woody Guthrie, American Radical, and since then, I have just discovered this morning, he has written two other books about the life and times of Woody Guthrie, Woody Guthrie's Modern Blues in 2017 and Mapping Woody Guthrie in 2019. Before the pandemic, in addition to writing and teaching, Will also traveled extensively doing what he calls live documentaries on various themes. Will Kaufman, welcome to my live stream show. Great to have you.
Yeah.
Will, you mentioned in an email that you haven't played the guitar in months, and I'm just wondering, it leads me to wonder how the pandemic is treating you, and you probably had tours canceled, and how's online teaching? Could we just start with there?
Okay. The pandemic is, in a sense, treating me okay because the enforced lockdown is enabling me to focus on my book in progress. And that I think that also explains why I'm not doing much guitar playing, because when I'm really locked into writing, I can't spread myself too thin. I don't know. I just want to sit and write all day, and then I'm just so tired that I just veg out in front of the television after a day of writing. So I feel I've let the side down, but I haven't been practicing for weeks. Now, normally I live in England here. I'm in Yorkshire. And
it's Yorkshire. You teach in Lancashire, but you live in Yorkshire. Okay.
I teach in Lancashire, but I'm across the border, and this from the White Rose to the Red Rose counties, back and forth. And on Tuesday nights, I used to go up every Tuesday night to a session, an Irish session up the hill from me, because you've been here, you've visited Hebden Bridge, what it's
many
like.
times. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so we did have an Irish session that I would play at every Tuesday night in the old White Lion up in Heptonstall. But since the pandemic, I haven't felt quite safe to get out into pubs and things like that. I'm not quite ready for that yet. So.
And you've been too busy with your new writing project to bother with doing live stream concerts and stuff like that. I mean, you're very project oriented. When you're writing, you're just working on it for just all the time.
Yeah, I just get locked into it that way.
Which is a good way to do pandemics, I think. It's
yeah.
If you're used to the 9-to-5 job, it's tough. But if you have a project and you can just be immersed in it, that's probably helpful.
Exactly. And as far as teaching goes, I mean, I was off when the pandemic kicked in. I was on leave when the pandemic kicked in, so I didn't have to do any online teaching, but I will the next semester in the autumn when it picks up again. I'm going to be doing all my teaching online. I haven't done that before yet, so I'm hoping it'll work out, but I have no idea. I haven't tried yet.
It'll work well. You'll just want to get a good USB mic, and then you're good to go. As far as I can tell from the connection we've got right now, I'd say you'll be fine.
Does the sound suck?
No, it's good. It's good, but you'd sound better with a good USB mic or something closer to your mouth. I mean, it sounds fine. The sound is all over the place with these things. You see it when you watch TV these days too. Everybody's got all kinds of the people they're interviewing are in all sorts of different situations, which is kind of interesting. And there's a whole new art form to analyzing the bookshelves of people, because that's the most common backdrop.
Yeah. Oh, we're very strategic in where we place our devices.
Yeah, the bookshelves are good. Unmade beds, not so good.
No. I got that down already. I've got that. Yeah.
Can I ask you what you're working on? What's the book that you're working
on? The book right now is, as you mentioned, I've done 3 books on Woody Guthrie now. I've written 3 books, and I'm kind of all woodied out at the moment.
That's enough. Yeah.
And so what I'm working on now actually is a book that was prompted by hearing so many well-meaning people and champions of Woody Guthrie, Billy Bragg and others, refer to him as, the father of American protest music, which you and I know, and even Woody himself would demur at that one. He would not agree with that. So what I'm working on is a book with the working title "Before Woody Guthrie." It's like BC, before,
oh, nice.
BWG, before Woody Guthrie, and it's a study of, I guess I would call it, song and struggle. I don't like protest music as a phrase that's a bit too. I don't want to dance on the head of a pin trying to define it, so I just say song and struggle in America from 1492, really from the first Columbian invasion, right up to 1940 when Woody shows up, just to indicate that song and struggle have been inseparable partners in America and everywhere else, but that's my area. My wheelhouse is American studies.
I'm so glad you're writing that book. I guess it's a question of whether people read it, because it's not like, because of course the concept is out there, including from books you've already written, like the book on the songs of the American peace movement, which goes way back to that one. And you start that one begins before the revolution.
That's right. And it ends with David Rovics, if you recall.
I know. I'm all over that last chapter. That's the best last chapter of a book I've ever read.
So to plug it, it's called "Singing for Peace: Anti-War Songs in American History," and I co-wrote it with Ronald D. Cohen, who folks may know is the leading scholar of the folk music, really the revival. But even before that. He's written stuff now that he's labor song, history, songs of the Depression, the British and American folk revival. He's really the one who I guess is the dean of American folk music scholarship. So he's a friend, he's a good friend, and my mentor in many ways. And to have actually co-written a book with him is a real badge of honor for me. So. And he's looking at
this new book you're working on is a more broader survey of music from.
Yeah, I call it song and struggle. Yeah. So it's looking at when you think of the Columbian invasion and then Cortez and how music played a part in the conquest of the Americas and also resistance to that conquest, and indigenous music and struggles to silence the indigenous musical voice, colonial settler colonial attempts to either silence that voice or co-opt it or Christianize it, or various things that have happened before the arrival of protest songwriters and things like that. So it's, I don't know how long the book is going to be. I've written completed 6 chapters. I'm on the 7th chapter now. I must have written about, 60,000 words or more, on it. And it's a strange thing because usually when you're thinking of a book project, you approach a publisher having, drawn up an outline and maybe a table of contents and maybe a sample chapter or something like that. And I can't do any of that because I have no idea what it's going to look like, how long it's going to be, if I can, how many volumes, I just don't know. So it's
because you're exploring the material that's out there and finding out just what is out there. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of research on stuff that hasn't been done before. You're working with first, what do you call it? Not secondhand material here. You're doing a lot of.
There is a lot of primary material, and there is some secondary material in places you wouldn't think to find it. So for instance, a lot of my sources are from histories of Native American history, things like that, where songs are mentioned, but not necessarily in books about music. So I'm finding my songs in a whole bunch of strange places, but a narrative is coming together. So.
When the mainstream press and other folks, like a lot of other folks, talk about sort of what they call protest music, they often it's often like it all began with Bob Dylan, or it all began with Woody Guthrie. And then and occasionally it all began with Joe Hill, and none of those things is true, of course.
No.
Right. No. But it's it's rarely, only occasionally do you hear that it all began with Joe Hill, because usually most people talking about this stuff think that the 1930s was really the beginning of any kind of left-wing consciousness. Like, and what is that? Why is that? That's just because there were bigger movements happening during those times, or the music industry didn't really exist per se before?
Also recording, the fact is that most of these, for instance, the most comprehensive study of protest music that I've ever seen, I think, is Dorian Lynskey's book, 33 Revolutions Per Minute, right? It's published. I mean, it's a huge book. It's, God, it must be about 250,000 words. It's, about, I don't know, 500 or 600 pages or something. It's published by, I think it's Faber. And it begins with the writing of Strange Fruit, 1939, So, and the title is an indication, 33 Revolutions Per Minute. So really he is relying completely on protest songs that have come with the age of sound recording. Well, if you just look at American history, the abolition movement and the Hutchinson family singers and the Fisk Jubilee singers, taking spirituals. I mean, these were the super groups of their day, but they never recorded on disc. So before the advent of recording, I'm going into sheet music. I'm going on to the Library of Congress has amazing sheet music collections that are accessible online. There are various bibliographies and catalogs of sheet music. And then, secondary works on the history of popular music and popular song. There's a lot of stuff in there. So histories of broadside ballads, colonial broadside ballads, and early 19th century broadside ballads, 18th and 19th century, 17th century as well, So it's the stuff is there. It's just never been looked at in one comprehensive study of song and struggle, It's always been looked at in some other contexts. So my bibliography must be about 30 pages, single space now, But we're getting there.
When you look at collections of just like child's ballads, or the child's not being, for those who don't know, that's the last name of a collector, not children's. Francis Child, and you find that, and the stuff that Lomax collected, and so much else. It seems like a very large percentage of what just people were writing about over the course of centuries has been what we might characterize as political
Yes.
even if it's not like they're not collected together in that context, right? But
Yeah.
it's and then the music industry comes along. What, like, I mean, depending on where you measure it, like a century ago or 130 years ago or something like that, right? I don't know exactly where you say the music industry started, but it had a huge impact on how we think about music and what people write about and what people don't write about. Would you say? I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
a massive subject, but
I mean, the music industry, unless I've got this wrong, for me, the music industry begins with the printed sheet music industry for providing homes. As soon as the pianoforte or the piano is situated in a middle class home, you begin to have an industry that provides fodder for that. And a lot of the songs coming that are printed from, say, I'd say, I mean, I probably got my dates not quite right here, but I'd say that before the 1830s, you're probably dealing mostly with broadside ballads. Now, I mean, there is an industry of broadside ballads, as I suppose. You've got songsters back in the 1830s and 40s in America, at least, songsters. So these are cheap usually pocket-sized collections of lyrics that they usually didn't have music, but they are incredibly political. I mean, one of the nastiest examples I've ever saw was called the Old Rough and Ready Songster, named after Zachary Taylor, the general who, basically started the Mexican-American War. And there are all these political songsters that go along with that. The Rough and Ready Songster, which has all these horrible songs about, we're going to we're going to raid Mexico and take all their land from them and push the greasers into the Rio Grande and things like that. So there's a lot of songsters that champion Davy Crockett and things like that as part of the settler colonial arsenal, the music.
so they were put out there to be tools of sort of propaganda tools for empire.
Yeah, and yeah. These are part of the imperial, arsenal, and I think also and combating that. For instance, you would have, I guess, America's first supergroup probably would be the Hutchinson Family Singers, which were a New Hampshire group of abolitionists and women's rights activists and anti-imperialists. I mean, they were incredibly political, the Hutchinson Family Singers, and they traveled all over the North. They didn't do so well in the South in the antebellum years and during the Civil War. Obviously, it's like Abraham Lincoln not appearing on the ballot in the South. They didn't get get any gigs in the South themselves, but they used music. Really, they were, musical activists. It's an incredible history we have of musical activism in America, and the War of Independence. Before that, the French and Indian Wars, or even King Philip's War, or the Powhatan Uprising of 1622 in Jamestown. They all produced ballads, and they all produced, and they're not just ballads about what happened. They're ballads about what the hell we're going to do about these salvages, these savages who would dare to resist our incursion. Well, we're going to draft in some ballad writers in order to nail our flags to that mast. So, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of ballads, broadside ballads appearing that chronicle the wars of conquest. It's not only wars. I mean, there's a woman's movement, sort of a working class resistance that pick up the baton from the Wat Tyler Rebellion of the 1300s, and those kind of strains of resistance get transferred to the Americas, and the class struggle keeps on going there, and there are ballads to reflect that, outlaw ballads, breaking someone out of jail because like, if you know the old ballad Billy Broke Locks.
Mm.
That's about somebody springing somebody out of jail during the anti-rent wars, and things that you've written about, or you've on your timelines, you've got like a song a day kind of thing, don't you have? I can't remember what it is, but
Yeah, song for today.
history through song,
Yeah.
and yeah. So, but the thing is, like, yours are all you're writing them yourself, aren't you? And because there are so many Rovik songs that I could use at Open.
But you're looking for songs from the period more.
So, for instance, the one that you do, that great song about the St. Patrick's Brigade, St. Patrick's Battalion, about the American, the Irish, and they weren't only Irish; they were also German and other, and even some
Poles.
Poles, yeah. And
at least when I looked at the name at the plaque in Mexico City on the place where they where the convent that many of them lived, who survived and went to Mexico City, there were unmistakably Polish names in the list.
They were, yeah. So they deserted, as you know, and from the U.S. Army and joined the Mexican side, as you sing it. Well, I would have loved to have been able to use your songs or some of the Chieftains Rycooter stuff, but it's a bit. They were written a little bit after the fact.
A little bit after.
But I did find one that was discovered. A ballad that supposedly was written at Chapultepec, which is where most of the San Patricios were wiped out, and it's a song called "Buck and Gag Him," and it's written from the point of view, maybe even written by one of the soldiers who, it explains why you would desert, even beyond for political reasons, because of the sadism that you're faced, that you receive, that you're the victim of officers. And at one point, so to buck and gag someone is what they used to do, is as for the smallest transgression, they would pin you spread-eagled out in the sun, tie your hand to stakes driven into the sand. That's being bucked, and then they'd gag you. They'd shove a gag into your mouth and leave you out into the sun for the smallest of transgressions, And at the end he says, and this is why the Mexican ranks are being filled up with Americans, because they're so, and then the fact that was found at precisely where it was that the San Patricios were wiped out, one can propose that there is a bit of a connection, or at least a fellowship, between whoever it was who wrote that song and the San Patricios themselves.
When I was looking at a collection of songs from the anti-fascist side in the Spanish Civil War, it was like, there were, it seemed like the more sort of politically pure songs are the ones that survived, and so many of the songs that I found, which I had never heard before, were songs about how much it sucks to be in the army, or in any army, and to deal with all the all the daily horrors and problems of just life in the army. And then a lot of the other stuff was pretty overtly racist or anti-Moorish anyway, because so many of the Franco's troops were Moors. So yeah, it was very interesting to see which bits survive and which bits don't.
Yeah, do you know Woody Guthrie wrote a bunch of songs about. He wrote songs against Franco. I wrote an article about it, which is I believe it's available. Yeah, it's available open access. So if you Google Woody Guthrie songs against Franco, and I found those in the Woody Guthrie archives, a little because Woody would write these songs, and he'd make his own little makeshift notebook, and then he'd decorate the covers with watercolor wash and stuff like that. So I found this neat little thing, songs against Franco, and it's I mean, written obviously long after the fact. I think he was writing them in the 1950s, I think, early 1950s, if I got that right.
Right. And Franco was still very much in power.
Still there. Yeah, yeah. So he's commenting on, the guy that is still there. And I think maybe it's 1949, maybe when Woody is writing the songs against Franco. And, he never published any of them, never recorded any of them. But they're there. He was on the case,
He didn't publish or record them because basically of the conditions of the social movement at the time? I mean, is his stuff from the 30s is more well known than anything else he wrote. Yes. And I assume that's because there was a huge social movement going on at the time, including, entities like the Communist Party and the councils of the unemployed and so many others that were promoting his music along with other music that was speaking to the times.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and even that would have been a pretty small fellowship. I mean, Dust Bowl Ballads was probably what got him onto the public radar, into the national radar anyway. And that was 1940 that he recorded that. He had a very short recording career. He only recorded for about 12 years because when Huntington's disease kicked in around 1952, really that's when it begins to show up. I mean, he's not completely disabled then. He's playing, but I think, by like 1956, he's certainly out of the picture as a recording artist. And some of that did coincide with the turning of the screws against the folk artists by, McCarthyites in fact, I just got a great book and I pulled it out here so I could show you guys because I've read it in manuscript and I have a back cover blurb, but this has just been published. Aaron Leonard's The Folk Singers and the Bureau. And it's all about the
Excellent.
Where are you? Can you see?
Oh, you're there. I can see it. Yeah, you're not. The screen got raised up a little bit now.
Sure did.
There we go.
This thing is perched on like 15 books in
excellent.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Sorry about that.
Oops, we lost you there. Come back. There might have been a connection that got unplugged or something, but we'll probably get him back. And we are talking with Will Kaufman on Discussions with David, which you can hear live at 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT, most Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays every week, along with other broadcasts I host at the same time on Mondays and Tuesdays. All of these broadcasts go out live on the Facebook pages of Popular Resistance, Cebu Community Radio, and elsewhere, and they're all archived on my YouTube channel and at youtube.com/DRovics, on Patreon at patreon.com/David Rovics, and in podcast form if you look for This Week with David Rovics on any podcasting platform. Will, you
Panache as ever.
Perfect entrance. When if you look up your name on Google, you'll find very quickly references to Donald Trump's father.
Yes.
And it was only after you published your first book about Woody Guthrie and did a really good speaking tour around the U.S., which is, I believe, where I know I heard you on National Public Radio at least 2 or 3 times, because I was traveling and touring around the U.S. performing while you were also doing your book tour. So I'd be listening to NPR in different states, and I thought, oh, there's the guy who just wrote that book about Woody Guthrie again. And it was wonderful to get to hear several interviews with you, and it's just by accident, which is I would have been seeking them out, but that was when you come up by accident talking about Woody Guthrie, that was especially exciting for me as a traveling musician singing Woody songs. But then it was later that you discovered in some archival research some songs that Woody wrote about Fred Trump, and that that Donald Trump's racist father was his landlord there.
Woody's landlord. Yeah, I mean the story of that was happening. I was researching for my second It's called Woody Guthrie's Modern World Blues. So I was researching for that, and that's about Woody and his relation to modernity in the modern world and how he responded to modernity. But I was researching for that book. I guess it was about maybe 2014. I think I was back in the Woody Guthrie archives, which are now in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's where they have all of his, well, huge, I mean, like 3,000 song manuscripts, the majority of which were never recorded. And his letters and his notebooks and his artwork. It's an amazing archive, the Woody Guthrie archive. So I was in there, and I know that I was going to be doing a chapter about Woody and race. And so I was going through his letters and going through his notebooks, and I noticed that he, had quite a beef with his landlord from 1950 to 1952 on the strength of the royalties from So Long It's Been Good to Know Ya, as recorded by the Weavers. He and his wife Marjorie and their at that time, three children. Moved in could get a larger apartment than what they had on Mermaid Avenue in Coney Island. So they found Beach Haven in Brooklyn, and it gave them a lot more space. And Woody loved it until he noticed that there weren't that many people of color walking around there. And he began to dig around and find out why. And it turned out that his landlord, Fred Trump, was sort of, really actively enforcing the color line. And so I noticed that Woody just really got obsessed about Fred Trump. I mean, he didn't only write one song. He wrote a number of songs lambasting Fred Trump and letters calling him out and essays in his notebooks about racial hate at Beach Haven and Beach Haven race hate. And I don't like the way old man Trump is treating me and a whole bunch of things. So he got really obsessed with the racism of Fred Trump, particularly at a time when he was corresponding with and visiting his friend Stetson Kennedy. I don't know how many folks watching would know who Stetson Kennedy was. A great anti-racist activist and folklorist from Florida. Sort of a mentor to Zora Neale Hurston in anthropology and folklore collecting. And he wrote a wonderful book called The Jim Crow Guide to the USA. It's like a mock guidebook, really written for people of color. I mean, it's a satire in a sense. Says this is the guidebook that will prevent you from getting killed if you want to travel in the United States. It's that kind of thing. He couldn't find a publisher for it, so Jean-Paul Sartre published it.
Oh, wow. It sounds related to the Green Book, I think it's called.
In a sense, the Green Book, no, it goes where the Green Book doesn't go, because the Green Book, I think, is a sort of a project that doesn't challenge Jim Crow, but enables it. It's an enabling book, telling people, look, you stay out here. Here's a safe place for you to go, But it doesn't really challenge Jim Crow polemically, I don't think. Whereas the Jim Crow Guide to the USA does, So Woody used to go down and visit Stetson Kennedy quite a bit in his farm outside of Jacksonville, his ranch called the Luthahatchee. And so he's writing a lot of letters to Stetson Kennedy about this place he's landed, Beach Haven. And he says, I'm living in the middle of a Jim Crow town. I can't believe it. Where no, as he called them, colored people are allowed to come in here and live freely, and Fred Trump is his Jim Crow landlord and things like that. So I had all of those notes, a couple pages of notes, sitting on my laptop since 2014. And at that time, all I thought was, isn't that curious? Isn't that a curiosity? Woody's landlord was that loudmouth real estate reality TV guy's father. didn't care much about it. But then come 2015, Christmas, November, whenever it was, 2015, when that loudmouth reality guy is declaring himself candidate for the presidency. That's when I wrote an article which appeared in a news organ called The Conversation, which is where it's like what's their catchphrase? Academic rigor and journalistic flair. It's where for academics to take some of their, as scholars, to take some of their work and put it out in a user-friendly way to the public. So you're not just writing for other academics, So
nice.
and so it's called The Conversation, and that's where that first thing. And then that's also a gatekeeping place for other news, magazines and sites to pick up. In a sense, it's been vetted by being so all of it. Because I submitted it to the New York Times, not interested. Submitted it to the Guardian, not interested.
In 2015.
I wrote it over Christmas 2015, so early 2016. They weren't interested in it, maybe because it was Christmas, but the Conversation wanted it, and so they published it in January 2016, and then boom, it gets picked up by the Guardian. New York Times is writing about it, Washington Post, PBS, the radio, all and it goes global.
Yeah.
And they're still talking about it now. Anytime there's a mention about Donald Trump's racism, they're always bringing it back to his his dad. He learned at his dad's knee, and his dad was so racist that Woody Guthrie even wrote a song about it. That's coming around a lot now.
A lot, and now with Mary Trump's book, it's probably a new round of attention to that.
It showed up in an article recently in The Nation about how Disney, is like about Hamilton. when Disney started broadcasting Hamilton, the film of the musical Hamilton, and they're saying, well, even Disney's losing, owning up to its own racism, but Donald Trump certainly isn't. And do you know about Donald Trump's dad? Why, Woody Guthrie wrote a song.
It's getting really into the mainstream discourse.
Yeah, it's weird how they're shoehorning Woody into, like, as though he's a touchstone of some kind, that if you really want to know how racist Fred Trump was, Woody Guthrie wrote a song about it. That's how racist he was. So that's still coming around a lot now, which I guess it's nice to have found something that adds to the discussion.
But it's also one of those things that makes you think about the nature of the media and the publishing industry, isn't it? I mean, and maybe social movements and a lot of other things, but like Woody Guthrie is going to be identified forever with certain periods of time and certain songs, even though his career and his songwriting spans much more than that. And I'm sure that the same will ultimately be true of Will Kaufman and his writing. He'll at this point, I mean, there's still a long future ahead of us, I'm sure, I hope, but inshallah. But at least at this point, you are very much associated with that particular piece of research, that particular song, at that particular time and place.
Yeah, which is fine. I every little bit helps. I was telling you before I knocked over the computer, I was just saying I just received this. So I want to mention the guy's name, Aaron Leonard. He's the one who's written this, because he's got all the gone into the Freedom of Information Act and got all the FBI files on Woody and Pete Seeger and Lee Hayes and Burl Ives and
Phil Oakes, right? Phil Oakes was being pursued by the FBI. Turns out his paranoia was actually justified.
Yes, it was.
I mean, Duffy St. Marie was a big target as well, I think.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if Oakes is in the. It's been so long since I've read this. I mean, I read manuscript. Publishers send me manuscripts to read to recommend publication or not. And this was one of them, but I can't remember if Phil Oakes was in it. No, he's not in it.
Oh, okay, maybe it was something else. There was something else I read
because this only covers 1939 to 1956.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that would have been before his. Otherwise you'd have been in there too if they extended it a little further.
Well, I did a Freedom of Information Act request to all the sort of usual intelligence agencies, and heard back from all of them that they have absolutely nothing on me at all.
No, but they do in New Zealand.
Yeah, and I think they do here too.
Yeah,
Because why was I on a watch list in New Zealand, in Australia, and Canada if I'm not on a watch list here? I mean, it's
yeah,
just obviously like they're not, I mean,
yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it didn't
yeah.
start from nothing, it
No,
started
no.
here, I'm sure.
But you must be just like, horrified to learn that they're lying about it. I mean, I know it's a
Oh
real,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, right. So shocking. Yeah.
I know, yeah, yeah. But
With when I look at Phil Oakes's, like I want to speaking of Phil Oakes, his some of his, well, I guess it was his brother, not to disparage his brother, I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but he put out an album of songs that Phil Oakes did not publish.
yeah,
And, in my opinion, they're not very good songs, and which is probably why he didn't want to publish them, I assume. And they're all earlier songs, I think, all written before he before he actually put out his first official album.
yeah.
And I wrote a lot of songs before I put out the first album that I would care to admit to, and I don't want those songs to be out there. They suck, I mean, it's okay if they're in my mother's attic, but I don't need to burn all the manuscripts or whatever. But I wouldn't want to publish them. But some of the stuff Woody Guthrie never published, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean,
It
some
is.
of those songs, and I love, like Ryan Harvey and Billy Bragg have both done wonderful job, or whoever what's the band Billy was working with,
Okay, yeah.
Wilco, yeah, they did. I think great jobs with great lyrics. And what do you think of the stuff that I mean, you've discovered stuff that Woody wrote while he had Huntington's
Yeah.
that was really worth sharing and worth putting
Yeah,
out there.
yeah. There's a lot that he wrote, and the thing is, it gets increasingly difficult to read these things, because one of the symptoms of Huntington's disease is it has an impact on your use of language. It has an impact on your clarity of language, so that your language gets more and more elliptical. It gets a lot more wordplay, a lot of incoherence, really, linguistic incoherence, and you can see these gems of ideas and this vision coming through so much of that. And some of the people who've looked at those later songs and done stuff with them have managed to turn them into just beautiful, tapestries of. Because one thing that I mean, the Billy Bragg and the Ryan Harvey stuff all comes out of Nora Guthrie, Woody's daughter, and her determination, as she said, to drag Woody out of the Dust Bowl, because he was so prolific a commentator. He wrote about everything, not just the Dust Bowl, and not just about oppositional politics either. He wrote about art. He wrote about science. He wrote about technology. He wrote about love. He wrote about nature. He wrote about so much stuff.
And wonderful children's music too.
And of course, and the kids' music, and that's what I noticed. That's what led me to write Woody Guthrie's Modern World Blues, because it is about his engagement with his entire world, the entire modern world that he lived in, and stuff he wrote about cars. And when I was in the archives, I found, after his first airplane ride, he's writing in his journal about what it was like to go up into the sky in an airplane. His fascination with the experience of flight. It was just delightful to read things like that. But and Nora knows, because she's read everything that's in those archives. She knows that there's so much good stuff there that people can turn into gold, and so she's been having everybody who she trusts really go into the. She handpicks who will be able to get their hands on her dad's stuff and turn it and to record it. And like the Klezmatics, I don't know if you know of this, the New York
fantastic band,
the klezmer band. They've done 2 albums of Woody Guthrie stuff, that had not been recorded previously in klezmer style, because
Wonderful.
Woody was he married into a Jewish family. Marjorie was Jewish, and he had a very Jewish sensibility. And in fact, I wrote an article that appeared in the Jewish Daily Forward about Woody's connection to Yiddishkeit. And I have to tell you a story about this because this is amazing. I was in the researching, I guess it's 2014. It was that trip to the Woody Guthrie archives in Tulsa, and I was there for a couple of weeks. And I'd go after the end of a hard day at the archives. In the evenings I'd go out for a pint of beer with some of the other people there or not. And I came home one day. I guess I was staggering home at about 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. The streets of Tulsa are deserted. So I'm coming around the corner to the Woody Guthrie Center, where I'm staying right next to it, with a big mural of Woody looking, with the guitar, this machine kills fascists, and he's looking down. It's the size of the building, right?
Mm.
So I turn around the corner, and Woody is looking down on a piece of cloth that appears to be tied around, that is tied around a street lamp, draggled in the mud, right? And the street lamp is shining on it, and Woody's looking down on it. And I see this thing, and I get closer to it. I say, my God, it's a Jewish prayer shawl, a talis, right? And I'm looking around, and I don't know how it got there. Maybe it was a prank. It was an anti-Semitic prank. Maybe somebody was just playing, I don't know. Why would you find a talis, wrapped around the base of a lamppost and, lying in the mud? But I figured, okay, that's mine now. I'm taking it. I'm going to rescue this thing, And I looked up, and Woody's looking down. He says, "You take it, boy." So I took it. And I brought it home, and I was in a hotel, and I washed it, soaked it overnight in the basin in the sink in the hotel, and it's clean enough, And then I phoned my fiance, who's now my wife, the Broadway actress Judy Blazer. I don't know, some of you may know of her work, Judy. Anyway, we were childhood friends, and she's Jewish, I'm Jewish. And so, and we were already engaged at that point. So I phoned her up. She was in New York, and I said, "You're not going to believe what I've just found wrapped around the lamppost," and Woody looking down on it. It's a talis. And she says, "We're going to be married under that talis. That's going to be our chuppah."
Of course.
When you're Jewish, you get married under a prayer shawl that's held up on four sticks and everything. So we were married under, and we call it the Tulsa talis. And I told Nora Guthrie about that, and it sort of made.
Did she have any idea where it might have come from? Did she have any insights?
No, and I wrote an article about it. I told everybody, the whole Jewish community in Tulsa, know about it. Nobody owned up, so it's mine. And so, the tale of the Tulsa talis, and that's Woody, because Woody wrote a lot of songs about Jewish culture, the amazing mixture of Jewish foods that meets everything else in Coney Island. His mother-in-law, Marjorie's mother, Eliza Greenblatt, was one of the foremost writers in the Yiddish language, working in America, and very close to Woody. And they would critique each other's work. And I'd see these letters and notebook exchanges between the two of them. That's a side that Nora knows about. That's a side that Arlo knows about, because he was bar mitzvahed, and Woody went to his bar mitzvah. So that's there are sides, dimensions to Woody Guthrie that you find all the time. He was just so expansive, an observer and artist, not just writer, artist. His artwork, his visual artwork, not just the cartoons that you may have seen, the line drawings in Bound for Glory, but amazing experimental watercolor, oil painting, real abstract stuff, sculpture. He was just an artist. He was a full-blown 100% artist is what he was, and politically driven, but not always,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'd like people to know about Woody, how expansive he really was. Yeah.
Well, in light of recently, of course, with the uprising that's been going on since the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, all over the United States, there's been, of course, a lot of statues coming down, and I know that the Civil War, the American Civil War, is one of your areas of expertise, and I'm I think one of the things that's being questioned and very rigorously in many different circles, along with the icons of the Civil War and the Confederacy, is also the founding of this country by the slave owners who founded it, and then I think also about the controversy over the many decades that "This Land Is Your Land" has been the most well-known song that Woody Guthrie ever wrote. And I wonder, just this is multiple questions all wrapped up into one without really being a question, but what do you have to say about all that?
Okay, I wrote an article again in the conversation. I think they use the title "The Misguided Attacks on This Land Is Your Land," so you can Google that, and it's about the sort of the recent discussion as to what they call cancel culture, and whether it's time to cancel Woody Guthrie because this land is not your land, this land is stolen land, and because the debate is, even last week someone posted an article, should we think about making "This Land Is Your Land" the national anthem, since the Star Spangled Banner was written by a slave owner or slave sympathizer, if not a slave owner. I can't remember, about Francis Scott Key.
He certainly wrote a book, wrote one of those verses clearly supporting slavery and opposing anyone that would dare rebel against slavery. It's right in there in the national anthem. I couldn't believe it when I first came across that verse. Like, really?
Right, yeah, it gets muddied up because they have the temerity to call themselves "We never will be slaves," appropriating slavery as a
we'll
metaphor.
keep our slaves, but we won't be slaves.
That's right. Yeah. But this discussion about Woody Guthrie, and whether he was insensitive to the theft of Native American land. So I talk about "This Land Is Your Land" in the context of what we know Woody felt about Native American dispossession, and he was not only horrified by it, because his father was one of the agents of Native American dispossession. His father was a shifty real estate operator in Okemah, Oklahoma. He could speak Cherokee, and through his ability to speak Cherokee, he was able to divest Native Americans of much of their land.
Wow.
Especially when oil was discovered to be sitting under that land. And
Which was like in 1920 or something, the oil?
About 1920, yeah. And then it lasted till about 1928, but all throughout Oklahoma, the oil gets, and all of a sudden, and Woody has things to say about that. If you listen to the recording, "The Live Wire Woody Guthrie," which is the only sort of, at least commercially available recording of a complete live concert. And Woody is talking about what they did to get the land away from the Native Americans there. We know that the song he wrote, "Oklahoma Hills," which his cousin Jack Guthrie had the temerity to claim as his own. But Woody, in fact, wrote it, and I think they agreed to share the writing credit for it. But Woody was furious because one thing that Jack did when he recorded it, and was quite a minor hit, was that he left out the verse about the tribes of Oklahoma, whose land that was, and Jack Guthrie just left it out, and Woody was furious about that. He said, "This is the most important verse in the whole damn song. Why did you leave it out?" So we know that when Woody talks about this land being for you and me, I guess it depends on who's doing the singing, who are the you and who are the me, or who is the me, and it's not specified. So it's a song that works in any number of contexts. I mean, there's a famous story that Pete Seeger tells about when he was at Resurrection City in 1963, I think it was, in Washington D.C. And he and a couple of people were singing "This Land Is Your Land," and they said, this land was made for you and me, And then there was a Lakota activist, Chief Henry Crow Dog, who was a friend of theirs, and he came up to Pete and kind of pokes his finger in his chest and says, "You're wrong. It was made for me, and you guys stole it." And all of a sudden, Pete gets all, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can sing this song. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" And Henry Crow Dog is looking at her and says, "Ha, that's all right. I'm just fucking with you. Let's all sing it as long as we're here to get something done.
But he's got a point, though, huh? I mean, but the founding, it comes down to the whole question of sort of patriotism and who this country was really founded for, and propaganda versus reality, right? And to what extent is the song? I mean, I know Woody's intent was very good, but how it gets understood in that context is different.
Yes,
huh?
That's right, and that's why you could have, the Republican National Convention, both during Nixon's time and Reagan's time, singing "This Land Is Your Land." Of course, they'd leave out those three verses, which would make it rather difficult for them to sing it. The verse excoriating private property, the verse excoriating the police state, and the barbed wire, the wall, the big high wall there, and all that.
It's amazing. You have to leave out most of the song in order to think of the song as being some kind of a, good song to sing at a Republican convention. But then I remember when I was a teenager, I guess I was still a teenager. Yeah. And Reagan was running for office and using "Born in the USA" as his theme song. And you obviously, I mean, you have to just look at any of the verses to tell this is an anti-war song.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
as Springsteen sort of came out and said, didn't he say something? "I heard the president was mentioning my name the other day. I guess he hasn't listened to the Nebraska album."
Yeah, or the song in question either.
The song in question itself, yeah. But and of course that was the great, this singing of "This Land Is Your Land" at the Obama inauguration. This was the biggest audience that song had ever had, and regardless of whose inauguration it is, the fact that Obama asked Springsteen to come down and sing "This Land Is Your Land," and Springsteen said, "Well, I'll do it if I can bring Pete Seeger along," and Pete said, "Well, I'll do it if I can sing all the damn verses," and that's what they did, right into the face of as I say, Barack Obama and the entire American power structure. They're singing that song right into their face, and could have made for some uncomfortable listening if you cared about the lyrics, So
I actually had a dream about Barack Obama last night. I used to dream about Bush and Clinton a lot when they were president, but it's strange the dreams you have.
That is strange.
And then I woke up and look at the headlines, and he's in the headlines because Trump refuses to put his portrait up in
That's right. Yeah,
the White House.
Yeah. But
Will, in closing, can we? What do you think? There's going to be an election in November here in the U.S.? Any predictions? I know asking intellectuals for predictions is a terrible thing to do, but give us a prediction anyway.
Yeah, there'll be some form of an election. Whether the results will be honored is another question. I don't know. Strange times.
Definitely.
Right? Strange, bloody times. But I'm going to be watching the next couple of months with a sort of a hiccup. A hiccup of cynicism, and no matter who gets in, the government always wins.
That's right. Oh, that's a great saying. Who do you know the origins of that?
I
Say
don't
any
know.
idea? I love it. That's so good.
Meme.
Yeah,
Some
as a meme. Yeah.
yeah.
I gotta tweet
So
that.
you don't know when you're over here on this side of the pond next, do you?
I don't know when I'll be allowed out of this country. I guess that's the question. I mean, and then of course, once I guess there are ways to get out, right? I could go to Ireland. Ireland is still available if you self quarantine for people from the U.S. You can, at least last I checked, you can fly to Ireland, self quarantine for 2 weeks, and then potentially go to other places in Europe from there.
Yeah.
But of course, the question of, I mean, if the venues are going to be open or not, if it's safe, or if they're going to be 25% capacity. Because as you know, I mean, of course, it's a whole other conversation, but the music industry was already in a state of collapse before the pandemic. And it was already true that touring England for me was like a break-even proposition. Basically, it was not. It's no longer much of a money-making thing to tour when you can't sell CDs and the venues are shrinking. I mean, the Islington Folk Club in London is now like 25% the size that it was a few years ago because they're in because it's impossible to find a venue. So.
Yeah, and your beloved Trades Club here in beautiful downtown Hebden Bridge has not opened yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so all these places and and what's happening to theater just breaks my heart, because my wife Judy is, and so we're in touch with all of her friends, all of these Broadway, veterans and stalwarts who are not working and don't know if they're going to see the theaters open. And the same as over here, we don't know if we'll see the theaters open in our lifetime. So
Big unknown.
yeah, but we find ways.
Although Denmark seems to be doing well. If everybody could have adopted if everybody had the budget to adopt the Danish model of just sort of subsidizing the entire society until the pandemic's over.
Yeah, well, we live in hope, I suppose. But I know you have a good following in Denmark, so you may be there before you know it.
If I'm going to be a refugee, that'll be the first place I apply for asylum. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining me for the hour, Will. It's been great catching up with you a little.
Thanks for having me, and we'll hear you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
And thanks everybody for tuning into this conversation with Will Kaufman. You can find this and other discussions with David archived in archived form in various locations, such as the Discussions with David playlist on youtube.com/drovix, at patreon.com/davidrovix, at soundcloud.com/davidrovix, and on any podcasting platform if you search for the podcast This Week with David Rovix. The music, the live stream broadcasts, and the podcasts are all free, but if you want to support my journalistic and musical efforts, plus have access to some exclusive offerings just for patrons, please join my community supported art program, or CSA, at davidrovix.com/subscribe or patreon.com/davidrovix. If you're somewhere in the region of Portland, Oregon, please go to artistsforrentcontrol.org and sign up for text notifications to be part of Portland Emergency Eviction Response to help us mobilize against the coming waves of evictions. I've got a crowdfunder for an album project going, also known as a struggling gig economy worker employment scheme. You can check that out at davidrovix.com/pandemic sessions. I'll be doing a live stream fundraiser for the album this Saturday, July 25th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. GMT. Hope to see you again soon here in the Matrix and out on the streets. Don't pay the rent and don't be afraid of your neighbors. Mutual aid will get us through. Bye for now.